I don't think I have the ability to follow the profundity or the eloquence of those both speakers, so forgive me for mumbling my way through this. First of all, I would like to thank the two previous speakers for introducing me and introducing the topic. And I'm so happy that you're all here to share this official opening of the book with me. I would like to thank specifically Minister for Finance Conor Murphy for attending, Mickey Brady MP for attending, thank you very much. Cal Boylan MLA for attending, thank you again. John O'Neill, Tommy Martin especially, because Tommy did so much work for me, I didn't have to do very much at all. Thank you for that. Gareth Keating, Roddy Haggerty, who's not here unfortunately, from the library, the Free Library, who was so helpful to me. And Caroline Lennon for giving me access to the memoirs of Johnny McCoy, who was the adjutant and virtually number 2 to Frank Aiken of the 4th Northern Division. Jean Hanratty was so helpful to me as well and gave me initial information. Tommy McLean gave me photographs of his father, which I used to make some wonderful photographs. Cultural Leonard Waugh, I want to thank for allowing us this facility today to do this, and Malik O'Neill for helping out to help this occasion go a little bit better. But I'm more than pleased that my son Edward Knipe is here, because the motivation behind this whole process, Father Edward Knipe, a 4th Northerner, and also my Aunt Sissy, who is a 4th Northerner coming to man, was a motivating factor within the family basis. I want to say at the outset that my rationale for this book is that I'm not aligned politically. I would call myself an unaligned pacifist. And the purpose of this book was to present facts, historical and academic, of a period in our history. So I just want to make that point clear. In that, the process in doing this was the Irish Studies Local Library, and Caroline's here, Catherine's here, should I say, thank you for the assistance in doing that. I went to the Archives Department in UCD. I went up and down from Armagh to Dublin on that train and buses, must have been for 8 months, once a week, to get most of this information. A lot of it came from the O'Malley papers and the Mulcahy papers. There are a lot of files, and there's a 4th Northern file there too. But I'm especially grateful to Aoife, who is the historian and record protector, let's say, in the Kilmainham Jail and Museum. Because if any of you are interested, there's a specific 4th Northern Division collection in the Kilmainham Jail Museum, which is very, very helpful. I spent a lot of time up in the Irish and Local Studies Library going through local papers. The Armagh Guardian, the Dundalk Democrat, the Lurgan Mail, the Portadown Times, the Ulster Gazette, the Frontier Sentinel. So I went through a lot of papers to amass this information, to provide it, as I would like to think, the factual definitive book based on the function and history of the 4th Northern Division of the IRA. Now, I'm not going to speak very long because I wanted to say I second what they say and not bother getting up, because they've said so much that I maybe would have said, but not as well. But one point I want to make, the front of the book, the typescript, the font, is the exact typescript from the Irish 1916 proclamation. So it's just a little point to bring that to you. Now, I just want to make a few observations. The 4th Northern Division were known as the poster boys of the IRA at the time, because there's a certain swagger about them and certain activities in which they engaged. 100 IRA volunteers captured the town of Dundalk, many of them coming up the river in boats, and they controlled that whole town with bravado. And also Newton Hamilton Barracks. There were 2 raids there, and the second raid, I mean, they were successful, they weren't successful, but in fact they were notorious and they were swagger in what was done. And it was known, and it has been recorded, that the Armagh Company, who was involved in the second attack, their function was to block all the roads, so block access to Newton Hamilton Barracks. But when they were going home, it was reported, thank God those smart-ass Armagh boys are going home. Because there were a bit of updates about there was probably the Ballymore Brigade Turning who said, thank God we're seeing your backsides going home. Armagh boys had a wee bit of a swagger about them. And that wasn't liked by, I won't say the country people at Ballymore, but people outside. So Armagh Company had developed a little reputation for itself. Now, the attacks on Camelot Barracks, as was mentioned, the derailing of the train when King George opened Stormont. These were activities that created this sensation that these armoured bodies are something good. Because within the Irish context, in Northern Ireland, or in the 6 counties around at the time, no one was more powerful, no division was more powerful than the 4th Northern Division, run by Frank Aiken, and I want to speak about Frank Aiken shortly, and Johnny McCoy, his adjutant in number 2. What's important and what I found in doing the book, constant change and flux was the essence of the day, because nothing was regular, nothing was constant. Divisions changed, companies changed, people changed. So the facts and figures changed a lot, so it was hard to tie it down to a large degree. But I want to just raise some points. It was mentioned Alt-Neve. Now, it was a terrible massacre at the time. But there are books written by academics and authors today, and they question the role of Frank Aiken in that event. Was he involved? Well, I can categorically say, based on my in-depth research, Frank Aiken was not involved in that Neve attack. Because on the same night, there was another attack in McGill's pub in Drummond-T. It's now the 3 Steps, as some of you might know it, in south of Drummond-T. That he was involved in a raid, an attack there on RIC and Army forces because of a purported sexual attack on the wife of McGill, Frank Aiken's friend. I talked about the state of flux. This is key to me because nothing was constant. When the treaty began, Frank Aiken was neutral. When the British Army left Ireland, they left a lot of their armaments, they left a lot of property behind for the Free State government. Now, Dan Hogan from Monaghan, when Frank Aiken was ensconced with the 4th Northerners in Dundalk Barracks, as Frank had said, maintained a position of neutrality. Dan Hogan, who was a Free Stater, came in and attacked Dundalk and took over the barracks and then captured all those within it, thus turning Frank Aiken into a vehemently anti-treaty Republican. And essentially proved further in life in the 1936 or thereabouts, when he became a minister and in the Fianna Fáil government, he became a pro-treaty. So he'd gone from neutral, anti-pro. Now this is Frank Aiken. So this flux occurred. And so nothing was constant and nothing can be taken as constant. And as was said quite eloquently, not by you, but on this occasion, John, it's up to you. I present the facts. It's up to you to make your own minds. Because I said there are some books out which show Frank Aiken being involved, not in the way. He wasn't, because the research wasn't in depth enough. Now, this is quite a humorous thing and sad in some ways, but the Thompson submachine gun. Elvis sang a song about he carried his guitar like a Tommy gun. The Tommy gun was invented in 1918 by Brigadier Thompson in the American Army. The first people to buy the Thompson submachine gun was the IRA in Ireland. Michael Collins got word of this from his emissaries and from his intermediaries, etc., in New York. Now these guns cost $250 each. In present day money, that's just £1.8 million for 625 Thompson submachine guns. Now the machine guns were bought by an intermediary and were stored in the Bronx, up New York, by New York Police Department friendly members who were quite deferential and friendly towards Ireland. So the New York Police Department protected the guns that were then subsequently taken by a lorry down through the Bronx, down through Manhattan to the waterfront, to this Pier number 2 in New York. And there was the east side of New York basically. And so coincidentally, the ship waiting for this consignment of machine guns was called the SS East Side. And it was flocked inside by about all Irish crewmen. And the shipment of arms, 625 guns, got to the docks. But then the IRA had paid off people, my guns had paid off people, and he had supporters on board the ship to get these guns to come from New York and to land in Dublin. Now, word got out that this was happening, and the New York Customs and Excise Department came and intercepted the guns. Now, a young man called J. Edgar Hoover was part of that contingent of customs men who came down to capture the guns. I tried to create an image. You probably have seen, all old enough to see on the waterfront, and Terry Malloy, Marlon Brando. And this created, at this time in 1954, the image of the waterfront was of violence, extortion, fear, intimidation. And this came out in the Kazan's film in '54. It was criminality to a large degree and a dangerous place to work. And toughness was required. So I am going to, well, just one point before that. The remainder of the guns that were not captured, 200 guns were not captured by the customs men. It was thought they came to Ireland, but in fact they didn't. Tim Pat Coogan maintains that only 2 Thompson submachine guns came to Ireland because they were an impossible gun to use. Me not knowing much about guns, but I assume in the form of guerrilla warfare, machine guns wouldn't have been the most adept thing to have. Now, I'm not going to keep you any longer, but to say I'm going to be theatrical here. You're my brother. You should have looked after me. You don't know. I could have been something. I could have been a contender, but I'm just a bum. And that brings me to say the point that I also found out that not only did Marlon Brando work on the waterfront in New York on Pier 2, an Armagh man worked on Pier 6 in New York 15 years later in 1969. There he is, me. That's young me in New York, 19, feeling, I mean, I worked on the waterfront. Me and Marlon were sort of, so you see my nightstick. So if I was protecting lorries and trucks holding goods. So if men came in with machine guns, I would take my nightstick out. Go away, go away. You're not allowed here, you're not allowed here. So that was me on the waterfront. And don't overdo it, just kill that. So what I want to do, having said that, is thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this moment with me. And I'll leave the facts in the book. If you want to buy the book, please do. Listen, thank you very much for attending. I do appreciate that.